listeners, it's your host, Amanda Stevens. Today's episode is It Takes of Our Time, where we'll be examining a creature that is both so famous it needs no introduction, but so fluid it needs extreme specificity. To make my point, I'm going to ask you to play along with me a little bit here in the intro. I want you to picture a dragon. If there's somebody listening with you, don't confer with them, just do it by yourself. I want you to really focus on every aspect of a dragon. What does it look like? The size, color, and sounds. Think of its personality and most famous qualities. Got it? Now focus on your image, and I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I want you to answer them according to the dragon in your head. Can it speak? Does it fly? And if so, does it need wings to do that? Can it change shape? What regular animal most closely resembles your dragon? How intelligent is it? Is it dangerous or friendly? And if so, why? And finally, what other information do you think is key to what makes a dragon a dragon? And welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a Takes of Our Time, a recurring segment in Tales of Our Time where instead of discussing a single story that moves us, we discuss an aspect of storytelling and delve into how they shape the stories that shape us. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and at this point, I'm sure you've already figured out today's topic, dragons. In the intro, I described these creatures as both needing no introduction and somehow extreme specificity at the same time. While that does seem opposite, I promise you that we'll get to a point where that will make sense. So let's just dive right in. Dragons exist across all ages, all levels, and all styles of storytelling. They pervade every culture and have evolved independently from each other. They are also one of the oldest monsters to make appearances in our stories, with dragons appearing in stories from ancient Mesopotamia, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, multiple appearances in ancient Greek mythology, and of course in Chinese belief, where stone depictions of dragons from as old as 5,400 BCE have also been discovered. Really, it would seem that the only thing that is as prevalent as a dragon in storytelling is someone to face it. That being said, as prevalent as dragons are in our beliefs and our stories, it would seem that we can't really agree on what makes a dragon a dragon. I started as an English teacher, so of course, one of the first places that I went when I started writing the script was to the dictionary, which is cheesy, but true. So, Cambridge describes dragons as a large, frightening, imaginary animal, often represented with wings, a long tail, and fire coming out of its mouth. Which is not a bad place to start, to be honest. And this did seem to be true, at least for the coworkers that I asked earlier this week. I'll be returning to the questions that I asked in the very beginning. Not only did I ask you, the listeners, but I also grabbed whoever was in the office as I was recording. This time it happened to be Michelle Chiang and Tristan Hildebrand, the hosts of Geek Out and Formosa Fauna, respectively. Listen up and see if their answers matched up with your own. So you pictured a dragon. Can dragons speak?
Yes.
Yes.
Do dragons fly?
Yes.
Absolutely.
If so, do they need wings?
Yes.
Yes.
What regular animal most closely resembles a dragon?
What?
Cat? Because Spyro.
Dinosaurs.
Regular animal.
Is that not a regular animal?
No, they're dead.
Okay. Bearded dragons.
Okay. How intelligent are dragons?
As intelligent as crows.
More intelligent than people.
Are they dangerous? And if so, why?
Yes, because they breathe fire.
Yes, because they breathe a lot of things, and people are crunchy and good with ketchup.
Can dragons change shape?
No.
Absolutely. One of the most famous shapeshifters.
One last question. What other information do you think is key to what makes a dragon a dragon?
Folklore?
Well, like, what's a good characteristic that I might have left out?
Oh, scaly.
They're innately magical, and they can manipulate magic.
I'll be honest, the descriptions surprised me a little bit, mostly because there were no long dragons. That is, more serpentine dragons from East Asia. However, the real reason I asked all those questions is because for all of them, there are creatures that have been referred to as dragons who fit every iteration of those questions. So what I mean is this: a dragon that speaks, flies, but doesn't need wings, and can change not only its size, but its shape, that is as intelligent as a human and dangerous, but generally friendly, which also closely resembles a snake and is associated with the element of water. This dragon not only owns a palace, but a great wealth of treasures within. This would be a great description of the water dragon from Journey to the West, from whom Sun Wukong gets his staff. Or if I were to reverse all of those, the opposite, a dragon who cannot speak and cannot fly. It does not change shape, and it has the same intelligence as an angry beast. It most resembles a turtle or a lion, and is very dangerous because it eats people who get near its territory. It breathes poisonous gas and guarded a specific river. Now, this describes a creature called the Tarrasque, which does not at all look like a typical dragon, but is described in literature such as the Leyenda Aurea, or Golden Legend, around 1260 AD, with the word Draco as the very first descriptor. If we were to go farther, some dragons have feathers and some have fur. Some are legless, while others have 6 or more. Sometimes they live in mud, others they're pillagers and scavengers who live in caves, and sometimes they live in their own cushy castles. Moral alignment also varies, as does their own agency. Sometimes just evil monsters who want to cause pain, guardians of important, powerful items at the bidding of higher powers, the highest defenders of justice working with deities to keep the peace, and in some other tellings, they're the deific figures themselves. So again, we're stuck with the question, what makes a dragon a dragon? Despite it all, there are a few characteristics which are largely true to all dragons. Number 1, they are generally reptilian in some way. While snakes or lizard-like features are most common, some more unconventional dragons have turtle or even alligator features. Number 2, to that end, basically every dragon has sharp teeth. And number 3, they are all dangerous, or at least supposed to be. Even if a dragon can be killed, it almost always requires either a hero who has been lifted up, divine intervention, a god themselves, or a lot of regular people. And even then, sometimes the dragon still wins, or can only be avoided. But personally, I think that dragons, or at least all evil-aligned dragons, also share one other characteristic. They represent a large, unconquerable problem or truth about the world. So to get into that, we're going to need to take another quick aside to look at another aspect of monsters, monster theory, which, yes, is a real thing. So what is monster theory? Shortly said, it's the study of monsters and what they can tell us about a society or the society that created them. People have always studied monsters, but it wasn't properly named until 1996 when the book Monster Theory, Reading Culture by Jeffrey Jerome Cohen was published. In it, Cohen argued that monsters provide a key to understanding the culture that spawned them. His book was a collection of essays from himself and other scholars which looked at monsters as metaphors for, quote, symbolic expressions of cultural unease that pervade a society and shape its collective behavior, end quote. Of course, I feel like it's important to mention that the book itself does focus on Western concepts of monstrosity, which is very broad but unadmitted bias. Still, his theory has parts which are helpful to all different kinds of media. For example, monsters in general can be easily broken down into 2 categories, a mix of 2 antithetical ideas, and a transgression of boundaries, real or cultural, which shouldn't be crossed. One well-known monster which mixes the antithetical is a cyclops. They are at once too much and too little, being huge and overbearing, but only having one eye. Or Dracula, who is both alive and dead, and very old but young and handsome. But Dracula also crosses boundaries. He's terrible, violent, and also sensual and seductive. But let's keep going with Dracula and see what other parts of his story may have been scary or transgressive. He was a foreigner who immigrated into England, and once there, began to literally infect the people living there with his dark curse. Or we could take modern interpretations, which often look at Dracula as a member of the social elite, a rich person who literally feeds off of the lives of the poor. I think Dracula is a great example of how monsters in stories can demonstrate pervasive societal fears from when they were written, whether that's immigration, social inequity, death, or something else. Of course, like with all theory, there's no one right answer or way to interpret the story or monster. But by reinterpreting story elements, such as monsters, we can try to understand what makes them tick and what makes them such a threat to us, beside the sharp teeth. So, let's take this idea of monster theory and try to tie it back into dragons. Now that we have a working understanding of monster theory, I'm actually going to bring somebody else into the conversation who has, like me, studied monster theory. My friend, Jared Friesen.
Thank you very much for having me.
Welcome back. So before we get started, I want to ask you what, in your opinion, is a dragon's role in a story?
I think a dragon's role in the story, almost historically, is this ultimately powerful, and I use ultimately here in the sense of like the final thing of power and conflict against us. And that's a very Western tradition too.
Yeah.
So power first and foremost in a dragon, and then power on your behalf maybe coming from Asia, or power opposed against you in a more Western tradition too. And as that's gone on from a more classical point of view, we've complicated it too by making them more relatable. Like with all of our monsters, you have dragons that are good and wise. You have like Pete the Dragon from Disney. You have one or two dragons kicking around in the Book of Revelations in the Bible, along with Leviathan too. And so a thing that people agree on is like dragons are powerful, but it's just something that powerful demands being addressed by the story. They're usually like the ultimate conflict in a story, or the ultimate thing that we have to fix the conflict in ourselves as like readers or in ourselves as characters to overcome.
So, you know, kind of the discussion that I've been having, one-sided discussion, I suppose, about the role of dragons in folklore. And this is something that has been really discussed. But one other way to look at dragons that I would like to posit is that dragons are the biggest form that a problem can take in any kind of story. They're immune to mundane solutions and often require divine intervention, either from a god themselves or a special hero, or from like a large mass of people all working together on the same problem. And that even when you are able to kill a dragon, sometimes that's just kicking the can down the road. So in my opinion, I think one role of dragons in stories is to represent these big problems that one person alone can't solve, or where it's understandable if one normal person fails because you're up against a dragon.
I think that's a fair reading. I especially like the way you put it as like they're the biggest form a problem can take in a story. Usually like they're at the climax. They're the thing you fight in the end. It is interesting once you take like a really wide cross section, like a global perspective on them, they have to be dealt with in a myriad sort of ways. And they're also almost impossible to deal with as it stands.
So moving forward with this idea or definition, I would like to try to show it through one more traditional example, the dragon fight from the end of Beowulf. Because I think one more interesting way to look at dragons in stories is that they can offer heroes an out in or a situation in which it's okay for them to fail or even die. So revisiting Beowulf, this guy who is a famous monster killer, he's become a king at 96, essentially. If it's not 96, it's otherwise in his 90s, fights a dragon. And he's able to kill the dragon, but in the process suffers a wound which causes him to die. And in this scenario, I think this is an acceptable path for Beowulf to die. But also in other mythologies, I think that dragons offer maybe like an out.
I also think too, like the people or the institutions or the group of people who beat dragons are essentially very virtuous, at least in like the Western tradition of saints killing dragons or helping people defeat their dragons. And Beowulf is living up to his cultural ideal. It predates Christianity, but he's being the ideal king in this moment of always valiantly facing what is dangerous to his people and essentially paying the price, but still beating his enemy. But like you said too, is these problems that come with old age will still always be young and strong, will always be a dragon. But you won't always be the person to slay that dragon and walk away.
Yeah. In my reading of it, I like to look at that dragon as like that dragon is old age or death. Even if you kill it, that it still took out Beowulf.
I thought it was like the vitality of our problems compared to us. Whereas yours like is just flat out death too.
I think that's one way it could be read. Death or old age is this problem that comes for all of us, especially if you're looking at it for Beowulf. Like, to me, I feel like it could be interpreted as like Beowulf chasing his younger ability or his younger self, while also doing the job of a good king. I see it as a more like character-centric fight, as like this is also Beowulf trying to be Beowulf, like the unconquerable fighter, right? The one who will stand against this incursion of nature or violence or whatever else that this dragon is. And in his mind, standing up against the inevitability of death.
Yeah, and I think that does show like the very relatable need of we're going to keep getting older. Our body's failing us, but our memory of how we used to be doesn't necessarily. It's a very relatable feeling too, to project ourselves into this heroic king that can go out and fight these dragons. It helps us make our own peace.
And so perhaps if we make these problems into dragons, it offers us an opportunity to fight back against problems that otherwise are just kind of like terrible truths of the world.
I think, yeah, and it gives us a chance to show us the best portion of ourselves in the fighting of it. It wouldn't be interesting if this was the best version of Beowulf and then he kept living happily after it. The story's more powerful for winning but not winning in the end.
So now I guess I'll get to the reason that I wanted to talk about this. And it's a little bit less mythical and a little bit more topical, which is that a lot of the news today can seem very overwhelming. And to me, that sort of gave me like a dragon feeling, which is that perhaps what we're looking for is like a reason for why things are so hard right now, or like why these problems just seem to keep coming. But I feel like if we are going to like look for the dragons in our world, even though I said these dragons often represent like unconquerable problems, I think that by turning these problems into something like a dragon, we can look at it as something that we can try to address.
I'd agree, because I think that's also a place like where dragons come in to like bind an audience together. We all know what the danger is. We all know what the threat is. We all know what the problem is. It's the dragon. And then we name it, and eventually someone understands it enough, or at least finds that trick that will get them over this problem. And the dragon gets beaten. So I think that can be a very empowering thing. Is like, yes, it is a dragon. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be daunted or intimidated.
It's okay to be defeated. It hopefully for us in the real world temporarily, because problems that are as large as a dragon are big. They're not meant to be defeated by a single normal person.
And even the heroes take a couple tries. Like, I believe St. George in some tellings has to go at it a couple times or a couple days in a row and almost dies each time.
To that end, the Tarrasque that I mentioned earlier has sort of a sad but maybe hopeful ending where a hero, a saint, ties a magical like girder around it that makes it tame. It's brought back to the village, and the people of the village just kind of beat it to death with rocks, which is a wildly like kind of nice at the fact that it could be killed the whole time. It's just that people couldn't get to it. I'm not saying we should beat our problems to death with rocks, but
it shows the power of collective action.
It does show that, but it shows that perhaps with good leaders and collective action, we can solve our problems and slay our dragons.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. That's all the time that we have for today. Thank you, Jared, for coming in to discuss this final part with me.
I'll always talk dragons.
And I hope two things. One, I hope that you have a better understanding of what makes a dragon a dragon. There are a lot of different possibilities, but I hope that you've learned, one, the breadth of dragons in stories, two, at least one way to interpret them, and three, that even if you don't agree with us, that's fine. Like with most other ways that we make meaning, meaning is made in a story, not found and not hidden. We'll see you next time on a regular episode of Tales of Our Time.